Hi, everybody. Thank you for subscribing to my podcast, or rather to my YouTube channel, Politics with Sherry Jacobus. My podcast over on Patreon is named the same thing. So, excuse my kind of mixing them up a little bit there. And if you haven't subscribed, I hope you will. Look, we're in trouble. And I sometimes I get feedback. People think, they say, why are you attacking Democrats? We all have to be on the same team, because I've gone after Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and Ken Martin at the DNC. And I think we need to talk about that. Know the difference between infighting and how, we think, oh, is that doing the job for MAGA? No, it's not. I was back and forthing with someone today. I was out and about, and this person is very concerned about the Trump is not going to stop. And we are still 10 years into this debacle, into this crisis, into this downward spiral, into fascism. We are still, we'll just do a little bit, or we hope somebody else will take care of it. It's like we still haven't accepted just how bad this is and where we are. And history is not going to look at us kindly, because there's no one coming to our rescue. It is just us. Okay? So when you've got somebody like Chuck Schumer doing nothing, and as you know, we talk about this all the time, daily briefings at a minimum, under the auspices of Congress. And I've already laid out how to pay for this, how to structure it. The press are right there waiting for content, waiting for something. And instead, they are just sitting there ceding this space to Trump and MAGA, where we could be there every single night on the nightly news, in the same news cycles, everything on Twitter, everywhere. If these daily briefings streaming and on TV, and yes, the media would cover them, have them on par with the White House briefing for fact checking, for anything. Okay. People are so hungry. Democrats are so hungry. Independents, anybody who's terrified of what Trump is doing is so hungry for anything. That is why we have latched on to Gavin Newsom and what he's done. We need to clone him. He's using his power. So when I see somebody like Joe Scarborough, Morning Joe on MSNBC, acting like, well, I don't think that's something Gavin Newsom should be doing. Joe, shut the F up. I mean it. I'm tired of this. You've gone so back and forth on Trump. I don't even think you should have a show. Now, folks, I've known Joe Scarborough. I used to be friendly with him. I used to be on his old show a lot, Scarborough Country, that he had in the evenings on MSNBC. We've been friendly, and we've been on Montel Williams' show together. We've been friendly for years. I first got to know him when he had won his first congressional seat, but he hadn't even been sworn in yet. That's how long I've been around. So I know Joe. And for him to go there and start criticizing Gavin Newsom, who is so supremely effective at this, it's finally, we have somebody who's doing something. And then Joe Scarborough wants to go and crap all over it after what he's done. Joe is the one that went down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring. Joe is the one that helped put Trump in the White House. In my own personal history with this, Joe is the one who allowed Corey Lewandowski to call into Morning Joe, defame me, completely lie about me, on the air, just in a phone call. See, I was on TV a lot then, and I was very effective critic of Trump's, which is why they made sure I'm not on TV anymore. And so when I tried to contact them and say, let me on the show to defend myself, Lewandowski's lying, I can prove it, I was told no. I said, well, then I need Joe to read a statement saying that Sherry Jacobus disputes what Corey Lewandowski said. They said no. So I'm sorry, but Joe Scarborough is not trustworthy. He is not our friend. And I don't care if sometimes he's entertaining or sounds smart. You know, even a broken clock is right twice a day. But once they lose your trust, once they show that they're gaslighting you, lying to you, or doing something for their own agenda and pretending they're doing it for you, they don't belong in that arena. They shouldn't have the platform. Let him go do it on his own, or he can have a YouTube channel. But no, I'm done with Joe Scarborough, and I wish that MSNBC would be as well. This has happened too many times with him, okay? We need what Gavin Newsom is doing. It's very effective. And as Jon Stewart, the editorial board, he's my podcast guest this week, as he said, I think I put the clips up on social media. He said he thinks that Gavin Newsom, this is brilliant, and it is replicable. Everybody should be doing it. I'm surprised that people in the media didn't shine a light on this before. And as John said, again, if you're not following him on Twitter, it's the editorial board, or maybe it's editorial board. That's the name of it, but it's at Jon Steuer, STOEHR, I believe. And then on Blue Sky, it's editorial board. So What he's saying is that this is replicable. More people could be doing this. That's why we're just so glad that Gavin Newsom is finally doing something that others should have been doing. Because what Gavin Newsom is doing is showing MAGA just how he's exposing them to Trump's dementia, his cognitive decline. And that is important because, as John says, the media kind of just takes what Trump says and then they report it in what they think he meant, rather than reporting what he said and showing how dementia and how demented he is. They're kind of translating for him and doing what we call sane washing, making him seem sane. And many MAGA, I would say most MAGA, are not on True Social, so they don't even know they don't even know that Trump is doing this stuff until Gavin Newsom does it. Now, because people are like, what are you talking about? A lot of MAGA didn't even know that Trump was making these insane True Social posts, just like in 2016 and 2015. People weren't on Twitter. They didn't know the insane stuff that he was saying on Twitter. Because we get in our little information silos. We all get our media in different ways. So where Joe Scarborough, what he could be doing is helping to shine a light on this. And instead, I think, you know what? I think Joe Scarborough is jealous of Gavin Newsom. That's simple. Plain and simple. Full stop. He's just jealous. Sorry, Joe, but Gavin is better at this than you. Your time has come and gone for being in office, and I think that your time should be over having the platform that you have on cable television. You've blown it too many times. Fool me once or twice, shame on you. Fool me a third time or fourth or fifth, yeah, shame on me. So, yeah. But we've seen this a lot. Democrats just don't really want to step up, which is why Gavin Newsom is so effective, because we are hungry for this. We have been so hungry for somebody to show some leadership. Chuck Schumer isn't. I think he's complicit. He's worse than Merrick Garland, as I said yesterday in this space. We need real leadership. And my friend today that I was back and forth with is very concerned. And this is somebody who's very bright, very accomplished, very much so, and is now genuinely concerned that we are not going to be able to climb out of this, mostly because we're not doing everything that needs to be done. So am I going to be criticizing Democratic leadership? You bet. Is that infighting? No. Are they listening to me? No. Should they? Yes. I'd love to have an actual discussion with them, a fight. You can call it infighting if they actually gave us a reason why they're not doing it. Remember the Mueller report. Okay, so Robert Mueller decided to adhere to the OLC memo. It wasn't law. It was just a memo. I said you can't indict a sitting president. But he said the minute Trump is out of office, he can be indicted for the obstruction of justice. And that's when we found out that Mueller's scope was so small that he couldn't really dig into the crimes that were so obvious to the rest of us. And that gave Trump an idiot MAGA, dishonest MAGA, treasonous MAGA, the opportunity to go, see, it was all a hoax. He was proven innocent. No, he wasn't. And then Congress still could have impeached him for those 10 counts of obstruction of justice. The House would have, and you know what? I think the Senate would have at that early stage. If you go back and you look at where a lot of establishment Republicans were in Congress then, Trump was sort of shoved down their throat. I think they would have jumped at the opportunity to get rid of him. So if Trump were impeached in the House at that early stage, I think there's a very good chance that the Senate would have convicted and we would have been out of this. But Nancy Pelosi blinked. And with somebody like Donald Trump, remember, he's been lying and cheating and stealing at everything in his whole life. He cheats at everything. He's been doing this his entire life and getting away with it. He knows to just hang in there and keep pushing and pushing and pushing until he sees person blink. We blinked. Nancy Pelosi blinked. And he knew then he could run all over her and run all over Democrats. And he did. And that meant that Republicans had to follow him because they were afraid. I think Republicans in Congress were very much hoping that Democrats were going to take Donald Trump down. That was real early on, the Mueller report. And then you saw what Merrick Garland did. And I don't believe that he was just afraid or that he's just a company man. I think that he might have been complicit. There's just no way that somebody can be that bad, that incompetent. Dotting the I's and crossing the T's. No, he wasn't. And at this point, when you've got somebody like Joe Scarborough out there with this big platform, daring to criticize Gavin Newsom for being the only Democrat out there who's fighting for us at this point in time. Sorry, Joe, you lost. Well, you lost me a long time ago. Yeah, we've known each other for years. We've been friends. But my country comes first. And I don't know what your agenda is, but it's not to save this country. We know that. You've shown yourself too many times. Okay? So I guess I could say, please step aside, give that spot to someone else. But, I know you won't do that voluntarily. So I guess we're stuck with you. But here's a warning to you. I and a whole lot of other people are going to be criticizing you loudly because we don't trust you. We don't trust you. We could have solved this problem with Trump anytime in the past 10 years, folks. We lacked the will. He's not brilliant. This isn't a mystery. But we latch on to, the generational wealth guys who pocketed about $50 million that you gave them to run, hard-hitting ads. They weren't ads, just videos on Twitter. They weren't really running these ads on TV to elect Democrats. They were pocketing the money. And that meant that Democrats lost House seats in 2020 when they were supposed to gain House seats. And that would have helped them cushion against the expected traditional losses that come in midterms. Instead, in the midterms, they lost the House. Because we like those hard-hitting videos. Well, you know what? Those aren't the videos that actually work with people in the margins, makes them get defensive. They have their purpose in some ways, but this was just, these guys knew that, it would get everybody all energized and they'd open their wallets for them. Many of them were getting ready to lose their houses, were deeply in debt. Now they're all rich. Very, very rich. Generational wealth. Remember that one from Steve Schmidt? Yeah. And then, somebody with a famous last name, well, only because of his ex-wife and some family drama and some clever tweets. And all of a sudden, this person is on late night television giving political advice and psychological analysis on how to defeat Trump with zero credentials to do so. We've done this to ourselves. So yeah, I'm going to be calling out the people who are hurting the cause and hurting the country and who are now, to bear some of the responsibility for our demise. It doesn't help me to say this stuff. Believe me, I don't get invited to the cool kids table. I'm not a part of that club. I'm a little bit too honest and I know a little bit too much. That is why Trump got me kicked off TV in the first place. That is why Trump attacked me and had me hacked and catfished, the whole 9 yards. That is how they operate. And to my friend's point today, back and forth, I texted back to him, or emailed back. I said, I think that history will show that this was lost. Because we're thinking, can we overcome this? Because people aren't fighting hard enough. We still want to be nice, and even if we do climb out of it, I think the real turning point, that nexus point, I think I've said this before in this format. I do think that when Trump was able to, I wrote this down, I looked it up, the first time it sounds like that he mentioned that he was going to maybe run again. It was in February of 2020 at CPAC. No, I'm sorry, 2021 at CPAC. February of 2021 at CPAC was when he first said that. By that point, he was carefully monitoring what Merrick Garland was and was not doing. And just like with Nancy Pelosi, Trump has been doing this all his life, right? And he's got Putin coaching him. Remember how Putin told me he had to dominate the streets right before he walked across to that the street from the White House to the boarded up church. He held the Bible upside down. He had just gotten off the phone, was trying to tear gas people. He had just gotten off the phone with Putin. Putin said, "You have to dominate." So Trump knows when somebody blinks. And he knew what Merrick Garland was and was not going to do. And that meant that he knew what he could do. Just like with Nancy Pelosi, just like he cowed James Comey. And there was a time when even Roger Ailes was like, okay, we've had our fun with this. Get him. Meaning he knew full well that Fox could end Trump in that Republican primary, 2015, 2016. Well, guess what? Ailes was absolutely shocked at the response they got from supposedly their viewers when they actually, when Megyn Kelly actually was justifiably hard on Trump, asking him direct questions about his long history of sexism, misogyny, and then some. But at that time, what Roger Ailes didn't know, and what none of us really know, although I kind of had a hint, was all these bots and trolls, these Russian bots and trolls and others, and we still haven't fully figured out everything that Cambridge Analytica did. Well, some people know, but it's complicated to explain. But a lot of that response was fake, but Fox News didn't know it. So they fell in line. It's exactly what they did. They fell in line. Trump knows how to do this. He is a bad, evil person. But if we don't demand that the people who can have an impact have the biggest impact they can, then we're not doing our job. Go after Joe Scarborough. He shouldn't be where he is right now. Okay? Demand that Schumer and Jeffries step aside and demand that we have daily briefings in the Capitol. Like I said, you can look at my pinned tweet. I wrote a piece for Day Magazine, plus I have a video, I think is my top video, pinned video for Blue Sky, where I lay it out in detail. Like I said, I worked at Capitol for a long time. I know how to do this. So I'd love to have a meeting with Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. And they can look me in the eye and tell me the reasons they can't do this. And I'll tell them it's bullshit.